What up, folks? Mikey G here, Midlife Crisis Podcast. I am freaking stoked. We are going to have an amazing night tonight. Spencer and I have been chatting right before the stream. Incredible company, BitRivals. But you know what we're going to do here at Midlife? We're going to do a little bit of that background first before we get into his company. But Spencer, first of all, welcome to the show, man. Nice to have you. How you doing, brother?
Doing great, man. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely, man. I'm super excited that you're here. We already got people tuned in, pumped to hear what you have to say as well. You know, I had actually never heard of you, but then my community started, kept on hitting me up. And they're like, oh, yeah, man, I definitely heard of BitRivals. Like, I can't believe you haven't heard of them. So I'm super excited to have this conversation. But as you know, I'm also excited to get to know you as a human. But before we get there, a couple housekeeping items. I'm going to continue to say this. Maddie is still alive. Spencer, I forgot to tell you, I actually have a co-founder who's my best friend that I've known for over 40 years. I am actually 42 years old. I'm old for the Web3 space, apparently. Might as well be 85. But we started streaming video games together, like I told you, and we ended up on the podcast because I found Web3, long story there. But Maddie is still working. We are actually, this is a great time to reveal this. We're going to start gaming once a week to switch it up and give us some more video content. We're going to use the gaming. We're going to play Diablo 4 because we were dreaming about streaming Diablo 4 when we started Diablo 3 way back in the day. So we're going to stream Diablo 4 probably once a week, most likely Monday nights for Midlife Crisis Mondays. And you'll be able to ask us questions. You'll be able to ask me about any of the guests and the podcasts that I've had. You can ask me about my plague space. And we're just going to be an open book. And we're going to play games and have fun. So that's really our big announcement. And other than that, our whiskey tasting on Sunday got canceled. There was a lot of logistic things. But I literally have the whiskey sitting on my desk. I cannot wait to do that. So there will be a live whiskey tasting, hopefully in the next couple of weeks. For the rest of the week, Mikey G, the Midlife crew, I'm out. I'm going back east. I'm visiting my family in Pennsylvania. I have not seen them in over 6 months. So I'm just going to be sitting by the pool, hanging out with family, and not thinking about anything on Twitter. And I'm pretty excited about that, to just take a break. But with all of that being said, we're going to get straight into it. But before, I got to do the formal introduction of my man, Spence. So Spencer, a couple things about this beautiful human. He's an avid gamer. Probably makes sense if you're going to start a pseudo gaming company, right? He's a filmmaker. Pretty excited about that because, as most of you know, I used to make all the Geico commercials, and I managed their brand. So filmmaking is near and dear to my heart. I spent a lot of time in LA doing TV production and video production. Love it to death. In addition, he's got a background in data. Dude's managing some software engineers. Dude has had leadership experience, which is also a great thing to hear from a person who's trying to build and lead a company. So that's a little tidbit about the background. Spencer, anything else you want to add, or do you think I did a good job?
Hey, I think that's a great overview. I'm sure we'll get into the specifics of all of that. But yeah, I kind of wanted to go with these like themes of different categories of things that are personal to me, but also help with my professional experience. So
dude, we're gonna get through it all, and I cannot wait. And so here it is. The famous midlife crisis question. How did you get to the seat you're sitting in today? Please give me episode 1, 2, and 3. Episode 1 being your childhood. How did your mindset, from an early stage get molded? And then 2, schooling, professional career. What are those skill sets that you picked up to prep you for the Web3 journey, founding a company, BitRivals in this case? What the current present day looks like, and what does the future of Web3 look like to you as well? So let's start with episode 1, man. Cannot wait to hear it.
Yeah, let's do it. Yeah, I guess, I don't know, I'll just tell you my whole life story. We'll go way back, but
go Go
Yeah.
as far back as you want, man. I've had people start as a little baby. Whatever you want. What feels natural and comfortable to you. You'll get
Right.
that vibe here real quick.
Cool. Yeah, so I mean, we were just chatting before we went live, but I grew up in the Chicagoland area, so really close to like where the Home Alone house is, and kind of that American, but also Midwest culture. Growing up in the '90s or the early 2000s, like
Yep.
all of those things culturally that define that generation, especially for us as Americans, but globally.
Yep.
Whether it's the rise of the internet and mass technology, streaming, 9/11, like all of these things are just things that kind of like defined us all. So that's kind of like, I'm in the headspace where I have younger brothers who don't really remember life before the internet or before like, they don't even remember dial-up and stuff like that. So that kind of like defines the generation of where I'm at versus the rest of my family, or some of my younger siblings. But
Right.
so growing up in Chicago, I'd say like a decently normal childhood. Like my dad's a working professional. He actually worked in healthcare, so he did like tech for healthcare and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that one of the things that I think was a trend that formed that, I don't know, just inspired me earlier on in my life was just this whole concept of stories. And I especially really like sci-fi. I was always drawn to, when you're younger, it's things like Star Wars and whatnot, and then you kind of get these other influences like Halo and stuff that pop up, and then it's maybe the sorts of things when you're younger that your parents don't want you to do, but like are right, like that maybe might be too old for you, but like I love the Warhammer universe.
Oh yeah.
And
My buddy and I got deep into that. That's fantastic that you brought that up.
yeah, and I watched like Alien movie when I was and a bunch of horror movies when I was probably like too young for them.
Dude,
My parents hate horror, but I love it.
I love that you brought that up because I had a couple older buddies and I went to his basement and we watched Predator, and I was definitely not supposed to be watching Predator, and just burned in my mind still is when that guy's chest gets blown open, and I just, bro, you brought that up, and I don't know, I just had a vivid memory of that. But I'm totally with you. I
Yeah.
kind of feel like we're living the same childhood, which is interesting because not many people come on and kind of describe my upbringing. So keep on going at it, man.
Nice. Yeah, so I mean that all like really impacted me. I saw, being both a filmmaker and someone who loves games, right? I feel like they're a very similar medium. One of the things I love about games is that they kind of elevate that storytelling experience and they put you inside the story.
Yes.
So it's really cool to like have the interactive feature of it. Some games go further than others. Some are kind of just like an immersive story rather than one where you make choices. But some of these game franchises like Mass Effect was a really cool one where your
Yeah.
choices actually mattered. There's a more recent one. I think it was called Until Dawn. That was kind of like a horror immersive.
Yeah.
That was really cool. And just the different ways that games approach stories. But I've always been a big believer in that some of the best stories have been in video games. Like,
Yeah.
hands down, some of the best stories are in books, like classic literature, and hands down, like movies. But so many people overlook the power of games as like a medium for telling stories. So where I'm kind of like in this phase of my childhood of exploring, all this like sci-fi stuff, and maybe some of the horror genre and these other stories. I also get really hooked on games like BioShock. And that game was honestly really defining for me, is story-wise, because I was probably at the right age when I played that I could really like understand the development of the story and how like all of these things, plot twists and characters and like the whole setup. Like I really appreciated that when it came out. And it's a very dark game. Like it is kind of like a horror game, but it's just so gripping. And I remember that just sticking with me. And I don't know, I'm always on the look for another single player campaign that's like that, right? Like that is the pinnacle of gaming experience for me.
BioShock, incredible. incredible. The original one too, like the first BioShock was just such a game changer, just for video games in general. And I know it's overused, Last of Us as well, but Last of Us was very like, and it was really the ending, right? Like it was a fun game to play, but then you make these like, it was the first time I felt like, wow, that's a pretty big choice on whether you save humanity or not, right? And to your point, these are really fascinating, interactive ways to tell a story. And you know what's unfortunate? I mean, I love this. I actually have this question. I mean, I'd love to hear your thoughts because there's tons of video games, right? But I would say there is definitely a smaller subset that are actually telling stories, right? Why do you think that is when video games offer such a great interactive storytelling platform? Are people just trying to make them fun or monetize? Any thoughts there?
Yeah, I mean, I've kind of noticed this actually because I'm thinking through my head like all the good single player campaigns and stories that were kind of like in that era. You had I don't know, like early 2000s all the way through like 2012 or 2014, where just
Mhm.
it's like the golden age of storytelling in games. And
Yeah.
today I'm just trying to think like what would be comparable to that? And there's a few here and there, but most of the games that you see being produced are kind of these either multiplayer free to play or like multiplayer co-op sort of games. It's a very successful business model, I think,
Right.
where you kind of have this free to play and it just relies on volume, and then you sell cosmetics and skins and boosters and stuff like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
And that gets to the other element that I was going to cover when I talk about games, is like the community aspect, which I think is great and really important.
Yeah.
But when we focus so much on the multiplayer and like that free to play, massively online model, you kind of lose the storytelling element of it. And
Yeah.
so maybe game studios haven't really seen that as profitable. But I mean, if I think there's been some that I think have been really solid, like the Spider-Man games that PlayStation did, for instance.
Yeah.
Honestly,
Ton
all the
tons of
PlayStation
gameplay.
originals, they've always just done a great job with their stories. I
Yeah.
love just like the Uncharted games were just like,
Oh, that was like playing a film, the Uncharted games, especially, as they got more and more, um, the graphics and just like how they were cutting from the cutscenes of the actual game. I mean, I remember the last one, there were multiple moments that I was like, "Oh my god, I'm supposed to be playing." Like, I just got lost in the cinematics, right? But yeah, I think it's a really interesting concept, and I don't know, this is Mythic Quest, Mythic Quest, reference if you've ever watched that. But head of monetization, that's pretty much what's killed the industry in the last 10 years, right?
yeah,
And that's really where I see the downfall, and I think you make a great point, is just it's become a business, and a lot of times when that happens, it destroys the creativity and the fun in it. It happened to Diablo, right? Then think about how Diablo, I had tons of friends that worked for Blizzard. Once Activision bought it, all hell broke loose. Most of the original people left Blizzard because the life got sucked out of it, right? Because now it talked about like we're going to corporatize and figure out how to make money.
yeah,
Fascinating conversation though. But one thing I wanted you to go back to, in the kind of the growing up, right? I'm hearing all American kind of typical, what people would think of as like, a good middle class upbringing in America. You had access to video games. Parents were working what seems like, what you would think of regular American parent jobs. But you said this storytelling thing. So where did that storytelling like fascination come from? Was it from the movies? Was it your parents? Was it something that um, influenced you, whether it be a medium or somebody that you kind of looked up to or admired?
yeah. Gosh, it's probably a lot of things. Because I can think of a bunch of different elements that kind of come from different sources. So, like my mom, for instance, is someone who loves story, but she loves literature and she loves kind of like the classics, and she loves Jane Austen and Dostoevsky and all that sort of stuff. And you know, she would actually sometimes like sit and read books to me and my brothers growing up. And you know, when I was really little, my dad was just a fantastic storyteller, making up his own stories and stuff like that. So
Yeah.
you can kind of see some of those influences. My grandpa worked in broadcasting and film, so he was like just the biggest movie nut. Like, you know, you go to his basement and he's got like all the old film cameras like lining the walls, and he had
Right.
literally every single VHS possible, and a VHS for every Star Trek episode that ever existed up to that point.
Yeah.
So you know, you kind of have like these different people that are interested in story from different elements. And then I think I had a couple of friends in high school who were like writing their own books, and making their own short films and stuff like that. I'm like, that's super cool. I want to be a part of that. Like, you know, let's make a film together, or let me read your book. I'd be happy to edit it and stuff like that. So seeing people taking that passion and then the creativity in their mind and doing something with it, I think was just that part that took me from a consumer of story to someone who wants to tell it, right? And someone who wanted to be proactive about making things and being creative. And whether that is something that I do as a hobby, you know, writing a screenplay or making a film, or whether it's actually building a company and a product, I think the artistic and the creative thought process behind it is just like invaluable.
Oh, absolutely. And I knew it. We already uncovered there. You had a lot of influences there with the storytelling and the creativity. So there's two things that I'm interested, and we can start progressing. Unless you have anything else that comes up that sparks from the rest of this conversation of kind of your youth. Two things. That word creativity. I'm really fascinated by creativity and how creativity is fostered, especially in youth, right? I think we're actually doing a really horrible job of fostering creativity in young people today. To your point, there were a lot of amazing video games and storytelling. And I mean, even looking at the movies, right? Like, when was the last great comedy made? Like, maybe The Hangover? I don't know. The original Hangover, not the other two shit shows that they made, right?
Right.
So what is it in your kind of growing up childhood area? Do you not relate but credit anything to kind of your creativity juices, or what was impact of creativity in your experience?
So I mean, the influence is really important, which I kind of talked about. Like, you either need to have a peer or someone to look up to, whether it's someone in your family or just someone older that you can see actually pursuing their interests and enjoying them and getting excited about it. Like, when someone is excited about their passion, that's infectious. And that leads other people to at least be curious about it, right? Like, someone could have a passion for cooking and just talk all about like the culinary mixtures and things that they're putting into different dishes, and that's going to pique someone's interest to be like, well, I want to learn some of that. But then you have to be given kind of the space for it, and maybe like an age appropriate space for it too, because I think that encouragement is really good, but you also need failure, and you need to learn from what you're doing wrong. So you need to, and you know, that's when I was in writing groups and stuff in high school, it was important to like passed around our writing. And it was important for me to get feedback from my peers to say like, this part's good and that part is not. Like, that I always value negative feedback as like, honestly, I don't even take positive feedback for the most part. People are encouraging you, like, that's cool, but I asked you to, you know, help me improve something. And that's my professional thought process probably creeping in too much. Like, I'm a problem solver. I'm always looking at ways that you can make a process better or something like that. But,
no, that makes sense. And I actually think you make a really good point, which is passion, right? And we talk a lot about this on the show, is like, where especially if you're an entrepreneur like yourself, right? You either got to be really driven by money and being the best, Or in most cases, what I usually hear is you're so passionate about something, it helps you get through the shit times, right? But to your point, I think a really interesting other angle to passion is seeing somebody at a young age passionate about something can make you believe and expand your mindset. And just in your case, it just so happens a lot of these people were, like you said, making films, being able to tell stories, and that's a really interesting take. Haven't even thought about it that way. So thank you for sharing that, man.
Yeah.
Appreciate it. My next question, though, is kind of relates to this, and you kind of said it a little bit, and we can touch on this later, but I'm interested in these younger formative years. You're an entrepreneur, right? It sounds like you came up in a typical like white collar America where your parents had professional jobs. Do you think this entrepreneurship exploratory mindset started young, or is this something later on in life? I'm interested in that.
That's a good question. I've always been one to be doing too much at one time. I always, at least in my mind, I think it's too much, but I'm never happy just doing one job or one thing. I'm always trying to pursue like the next level or to try to improve. You know, as I kind of mentioned, that's one of my like core beliefs, mindsets, you know, always be productive, always be busy. And maybe I'm too hard on myself sometimes, but always be better.
Right.
And that's important in storytelling. That's important in creative pursuits. That's important in business. So, you know, I don't know. I think maybe getting a taste of like what, like some of it so much like around business or like being an entrepreneur seems so mystical until you actually just start doing it. And I think maybe moving into kind of some of the creative like film and photography and stuff like that, you know, earlier on, because in high school I actually did some freelance like videography jobs, and kind of ran a business for that and made some income. That was pretty cool. And none of my peers really like, you know, some people might work at the ice cream shop or McDonald's or something, but you know, I was kind of just doing my own thing. So a little bit of that comes from me taking initiative. I do have people in my family who did start their own businesses too. Like my uncle on my dad's side has a very successful IT business. And you know, my dad has also been pretty, even though he's worked for companies, he's had a very like proactive entrepreneurial mindset and has always been open to talk to his kids about business and, you know, the way that things work professionally. He did a lot of work from home because of his position. So
no, that's great. And that, I think that's really good insight. And I also, so you said two really interesting things there. One, you just started trying things. And I think that's such a great point. This is it, right? Like this is a prime example of how, what's cool about this podcast is we start uncovering these things. And this is a great clip, right? Is people, to your point, you even said it beautifully. People think entrepreneurship is a mystical thing, especially starting a Web3 company, right? But at the end of the day, it really is someone like yourself that said, I'm going to try doing this. And you literally just put the one foot in front of the other and you start going down a path and you start trying to figure it out. Like it is that simple. And to hear you say that, I think is a breath of fresh air. Like these are the simple things that people need to hear to demystify, because it's not that mystical, right? You just have to start going in the right direction. Same thing that we were talking about in the beginning of this, right? I'm here with like a long format, deep conversation podcast that started out as me streaming video games to literally nobody in chat for months, right? And now I'm here. I have tens of thousands of followers across different platforms, and I've built a brand for myself in Web3. I didn't even know what Web3 was when I started, right? But one foot in front of the other. I love that point, man. And so it seems like you were starting to do that at an early age, and then you were starting to make businesses in high school. So anything else to expand on this conversation on the younger years, or do we want to get kind of more towards the high school and keep on progressing? Any thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, if we're going to talk about some high school stuff, like there's maybe some stuff to add, but
Yeah. So let's go to high school, because I already and hopefully you get the vibe that I'm going for now. We're kind of exiting episode 1 here. We're getting to high school. We'll start going to the college in episode 2. Um, but I'm just gonna guide you along, continue guiding you along this beautiful journey. You're already doing an incredible job, man. Amazing insight, a lot of good tidbits. And I can't wait to hear about high school and the rest. So take us through high school. Any interesting moments there? You said you're starting a film company, and let's go through there.
yeah. Let's see. One of the other things I did in high school was I competed in debate, like forensics.
Ooh. Talk
Um,
to me talk to me about that, because I don't
yeah.
actually have a lot of people on the show, and I feel like that probably could build some really interesting skill sets.
hmm Yeah, that was actually, I think, probably one of the most important things I've ever done.
Yeah.
And not just from the public speaking perspective. I think a lot of people think of it as a public speaking exercise. And
Mhm.
I competed in both. Like we did competitive debate and we did speeches. So you had prepared speeches and impromptu speeches, like limited preparation speeches. Um, the debates were both. So I did a bunch of different types of debates throughout high school and college. I did like Lincoln Douglas is 1 versus 1, prepared team policy is 2 people versus 2 people, like
Yeah.
long format, like a 90-minute sort of debate. Parliamentary I did, which is where you get your debate topic literally 30 minutes before you have to debate. So you
Yep.
get a little bit of time to research and come up with arguments, but sometimes you don't even know what the other team is going to talk about until you get in the room, and then you don't have any prep time. Like they give a speech and then you have to immediately get up there and refute that speech.
Yeah.
Very, very high speed, like think on your feet kind of thing.
Mhm.
And then in college, I did more of the like legal, like moot court and mock trial sort of
Right.
stuff, which
Right.
is mock trial is actually really cool because it's like it's a debate, but it's also like theater. It's like a stage play.
Yeah,
So
yeah, yeah.
yeah, there's a lot of cool elements to it.
My wife
Um,
went to law school, and, I was familiar with some people that were doing that stuff, but yeah, that it's really, really interesting. And one thing I just wanna point out before you, keep on going on, is what's interesting to me is you already described multiple different ways to debate, right? So, like, all of those are just different ways to think, process, analytical thinking, different styles. So, yeah, I can't wait to hear a little bit more about this.
Yeah. So I think, the speaking, being able to get there in front of a crowd and say your piece, like that's important. But the real thing that debate is teaching you is how to think and like how to think analytically, and then how to communicate that in a way that makes sense to an audience,
Right,
specifically the one that's like sitting right in front of you.
right.
And then secondarily, for things like team policy or like moot court, the research skills are just incredibly important.
Mm,
There's so much research that goes into it, and I think that's what people neglect the most, especially in high school. You have a lot of people who just don't know how to research things. They're debating like immigration reform, and they're mostly citing your normal like AP News, Fox News. Like they go to Google and take the first clicks and stuff like that, and they're not really getting down into the data and into like what's important. And so one of the things it teaches you as you get better at debate is how to discern truth, and
mm,
how to figure out like how to find credible sources of truth. And there's two camps of debate. You can go all the way back to the classics with like Socrates and Aristotle. There's kind
right.
of this whole um, uh, what what's the technical term? It's like the sophomoric idea, right? Like where you're making the weaker argument the stronger. So you're basically just taking something that isn't true or isn't a good argument, but through charisma or through clever argument, you're trying to basically win with a lie.
Right.
And then there's the idea, like the competing idea, which is the Socratic idea of trying to get to truth, and trying to figure out what's actually correct here.
Yeah.
And I actually do think there's a lot of application in those two camps to both to entrepreneurship and to the Web3 world, and we'll probably get into that more. But I think that what you see a lot is companies or projects in Web3 like promising something big, and they have all the hype and all the marketing behind it. But there really is no product. They didn't really have a plan for it. They're just trying to sell a token and get people to buy into something as a pump and dump. And that's like the idea behind any, whether it's a well-run scam or, you know, like a blatant scam, right? It all goes back to that Greek idea of trying to find truth and trying to find the best idea versus, you know, just making the weakest argument to the strongest.
Well, I this is amazing because you have now just used debating skills to relate it to Web3, which totally explains what you're getting at, right? Uh, someone can make anything out of whatever the hell it is if they know how to talk and debate and analyze. But I think the other thing I want to touch on too, and I'd love to hear, like, we can jump forward to your company, or just even in Web3 as in general, is the power of research, right? Like, no one talks about, and it's even in design. So, right, I went to design school at Penn State, really rigorous graphic design program. And the best designers and visual artists out there are incredible researchers, right? Incredible researchers. Because design, where I think a lot of people misinterpret it, is uh, they think design is art, but design is actually effective visual communication, right? You're using visuals to communicate something. You know, prime example is like a gas pump, right? There's a real famous picture of a gas pump where the grade of the gas, that the like the 86 or 87, is the biggest square, and it's literally worn in the middle because people are pressing that to start the gas pump, and the start button is this tiny ass little red thing, which is perfectly pristine because everyone's pressing the wrong button. Like, that is design, right?
Mm.
But to get to visual effective solutions, it's all about research. So what are your thoughts on research and how you kind of prepped for the business, or even Web3 in general? Was that a big part of your process?
Yeah, huge. And every day it's a huge part of the process too, because, you know, markets are constantly changing. So you have to research, you know, so much of the time you're going to work with, like, say, a marketing company or something, and or maybe partner with another project. And then you have to figure out, like, do some due diligence, competitive research, stuff like that, to figure out what the value is. And you're doing that, like, with every step. But
Right.
yeah, when you come up with, like, even the initial idea, I think research is just incredibly important. And this probably gets to a bit of, like, the start of BitRivals, like the
Yeah.
inception of it. But
But
um,
we can jump there for a little bit because
yes.
I don't want to deter. Again, very important point that does not come up a lot is just this power of research. It's so
Mm.
critical, and you hear it a bajillion times in Web3. You do your own research, but guess what? No one's doing that, right? They're just listening to a bunch of mindless shilly shit on Twitter. So yeah, go ahead and touch
Right.
on anything about that beginning stage of Bit Rivals there with the research.
Yeah. So I'm definitely having an analytic mind. I'm someone who wants to understand how things work. Like, maybe in another life I actually became an engineer or a lawyer or something like that, right? Like, I've just always been too drawn to the creative thing to just
Right.
do something that technical. But um I you know, I think maybe when it first initially came out, I brushed Bitcoin off like everybody did.
Hmm.
But when it started becoming bigger and Ethereum came out and stuff like that, I started learning
Hmm.
more about blockchain and smart contracts and just,
Right.
you know, money and fungibility and all this sort of stuff. Um, the whole gaming thing was kind of a mystery to me. Like, I started seeing things pop up like Decentraland or the Sandbox, or you know, you had your, like, in Axie Infinity, like your initial successes, if you will, that kind of pioneered this. But I always thought, like, okay, like, what's the actual application? What does that mean?
Right.
And then you had this whole, like, metaverse craze, I'll call it, where then Facebook even renamed themselves to Meta, and
Yes.
nobody, like, I feel like 99% of people misunderstood what the metaverse was supposed to be,
Yeah.
and how the metaverse was really initially tied to blockchain,
Yep.
and it's a concept that, like, it's a Web3 concept. So I started researching more into that and learning more about how, like, all these things work together, and the idea that when you're creating a game, um, in most games, you're creating a closed ecosystem, and you have a world with in-game content and skins or items and things like that. But I think it was, I can't remember where I first heard this, but someone was talking about, like, this special pickaxe or something that you could get, say, like, go back to RuneScape, right?
Yeah.
And then instead of selling it to someone else, like in that game, you could actually take an item out of the game and, like, hitch it to just this amorphous entity that's your wallet, right? And connect with anyone else in the world and sell it for real money. But
Right.
now imagine if you could take that and, like, bring it into another game, transfer it, like, across different ecosystems. And we're
Yeah.
definitely not there yet, right?
No.
There's definitely, we're not even close to having a concept like that. But
Right.
the fact that Web3 made that possible,
Mm.
that whole idea of having, like, a game of games, or it's
Yeah.
just like connecting all of these different stories and all these different games together in a technical way was just it's so cool to me.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
And
that
I love how you use that as describing the metaverse, because you're totally right with that train of thought. And then in addition, I see how the research got you there. I don't want to go too far down the path yet, but that's a beautiful. I want to hold that thought because I think that's a beautiful introduction, and we'll pick right back up there. We can do a shorter version of episode 2 because we were talking about high school, and I want to get anything else from this debate because I think that's what started this tangent, was just debate team was a super impactful thing to you. You started learning how to research appropriately, analytical thinking. Anything else that you want to touch on how impactful debate was to you, or do we want to kind of move on to the college times?
Yeah, well, it got me a wife, so there's that. I know my wife from debate. We knew each other in high school and reconnected later in life, but
There you
that's kind
go,
of the
man.
initial.
Debate is actually the key to life that no one knew about. Maybe that's one of our clips as well. Maybe that's our new mantra too. We can just start spreading that around Web3. Debate's the key to life you never knew about.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
love that. So you got a wife, you got all of these new skill sets. What else? Take me through debate. So you were actually starting to go to college a little bit. I'd love to hear the rest.
Mhm. Yeah. So I did debate through college, and some of my friends from debate are actually, like, lifelong friends, right?
Yeah.
It built community as well. A lot of those were partner sports, so, like, the team policy or moot court, you always have two people,
Right.
which is pretty cool. And we'd always go to tournaments together. It just kind of it's a social thing, like sports. And I did sports in high school too. I actually did crew.
Right.
And so I kind of had, like, that experience too. But I feel like the friends I made in debate just stuck way longer than I don't know what it is about that. Maybe it was because we continued in college, but
Yeah.
yeah, I think that I think that I don't know, I can't understate the value of that. And there is some like, entrepreneurial stuff that goes along with that throughout college. So
Ooh,
um,
yeah, yeah. Tell me about that.
yeah, so I worked. So I went to some debate camps, right, to
Mhm.
learn over the summer, and had some coaches and stuff like that. And then I ended up in college working for the company that, like, I became one of those coaches.
Oh, okay.
So I ended up, like, working for them, and kind of, like, pretty quickly. It was, like, my first year of college, and then pretty quickly worked up to be one of the managers, for that. So I started designing curriculums, and, like, organizing everything for the summer debate camps.
While you were in college, right?
While I was in college, yep. We expanded a little bit into political research as well. So we did some contracting for campaigns and political candidates, using those research skills, right? That was kind of like a fun, different sort of thing because there was a lot of like interviewing. We had to call people and investigate backgrounds and stuff. But yeah, I kind of helped like move Ethos Publications is the name of the company, and kind of like expand that and manage things. And that was maybe one of my first experiences like managing other people in kind of that business process. But yeah, I mean, it was something that I loved doing. I love teaching, like, because I love doing it. I love teaching it. And I just wanted to pass that experience off to other young people. It's, you know, so valuable for me. I think it'd be valuable for honestly anyone. You don't have to be good at arguing. It just teaches you skills. So it's just something I love doing.
The one thing though too is, and I probably, you know, I agree with you that someone's head goes immediately, oh, debate team, this is all about public speaking, but there's so much more, and it is a probably one of the smaller portions to make you an extremely effective debater. But I also don't want to toss aside how important public speaking is, being able to convey ideas in a concise manner. What are your thoughts there on public speaking in general, those skill sets that you gain that maybe, and just your thoughts on how important they may be to you?
Yeah. Sorry, I didn't mean to start my thing about public speaking with an That's always a faux pas, right?
No. Listen, it's totally cool. No, I totally get it. I watch myself a lot of times, and I really, really hate when I do it. And I've been trying really hard, but I still say it all the time.
So what I think I would say about public speaking is one of the most important things is the confidence that you get from doing it and just doing it often. I think it still maybe might be the number one fear that people have is public speaking, like even more than death. I almost feel like Googling it to figure out, but it's consistently rated people's number one fear. And it's one of those things that you're also demystifying. If you do it, it becomes less scary. And the more that you do it, it's just talking to people. And if you're talking to one person, if you're talking to a crowd of people or people over the internet, it's still just people at the end of the day. And I think it's important to view other people that you're communicating with as human beings. And there's a level of empathy that comes with public speaking, having meetings, even doing things like this, where you're learning more about other people, you're trying to connect with other people, but you see them not just as a figure, not just as a customer or a potential business partner or an audience. You're seeing them as real people with hopes and dreams and aspirations and ambitions of their own. And I think that's an essential element of storytelling, right? Is to inspire people and to take a message and communicate something that really resonates with another human being. So I think you learn that in public speaking. And if you have the right motivation behind it, you know, truth and storytelling and community, then it becomes something that just makes you a better person and makes the world a better place too.
Dude, that was magical. Like, that was a really good explanation. And again, I love the fact that when I go down these paths with people, like, your knowledge and angles about the way that you think are fascinating. And honestly, it's a little bit self-serving on my end that every time I have a podcast, I'm basically just going to school and learning some other, you know, great little tidbit about debate or I have my thoughts about why public speaking is important, but the way you said it is totally different than how I would have said it. So I appreciate it, man. I totally think it's a skill that people, and especially as we continue to get more connected and AI starts taking away mundane skill sets, public speaking is going to be more critical than ever in the future. So I hope, I pray that more people try to figure it out and at least try it. Back to again, though, you said it again. You just got to try. It's a common theme, and you just got to give it a shot. And hopefully, someone that relates to you can hear your story about just giving it a shot, and maybe they do it after they listen to this podcast. So that's one of the other beautiful things that happens. So let's go forward. You can take me through kind of I always have to literally too long didn't read TLDR of the professional career kind of up to getting back into that Web3 story. I'm interested, and when you go through this, really interested in kind of skill sets, again, mentors, things that stick out into your mind about that period of your life.
Yeah. I think that maybe the technical details of it are a little bit more boring. It's just professional job, kind of working in office culture, workplace, stuff like that. But
Yeah.
the way that kind of helps me understand how to work with people, or just how well like tech works and stuff like that, is just important as well. So
yeah,
I went to college, a smaller school in the Virginia area called Patrick Henry College.
nice.
Studied international relations and like data analytics, and then moved here to Ohio, mostly because this is where my wife is from, but there was a job for me here kind of in the area as well.
Nice.
And it's software, and it's like GIS data applications. So GIS is geographic information systems. So think your Google Maps, your
Yep.
well, that's probably what's most familiar for people, but anything that's data that's geotagged and related to how things fit on the earth, is kind of the space where all of that software and data analytics has set. So I know a lot about coordinate systems, geographic projections, shape files, ArcGIS software. ArcGIS is like the biggest provider of the software.
Gotcha.
And there have been some, like Google Earth has kind of like gone away, but it used to be people's primary way to interact with GIS, because you could go onto Google Earth and you could digitize different points and create all the polygons and lines and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But yeah, GIS is something that's super important to just so many industries, right? So you have, I'd say the government is one of the biggest users. That's always one of the biggest customers, whether it's the local government, your Department of Transportation, or like the federal government. DOT is a really interesting one, because you never think about it, but all of the different ways that they have to program like traffic lights and how long that traffic. If you think about when you're, if you're going through town and there's like 10 traffic lights, and this is a total tangent now, but you have to, when you are at that first red light and you go through that next 10 lights and they're all green, someone programmed that to make sure that the flow of traffic went through all those lights together. You always get really annoyed when you hit a red light and then like at the next light it's red again, and that's just a terrible way to manage traffic.
Right.
The data that goes behind that is actually very incredibly complex and very hard to work on the algorithmic mathematical side. So to first you have to figure out all the roadways, but then you have to figure out like how many cars you're expecting, traffic flow. There's a bunch of different, the problem is there's a bunch of different dimensions. So there's like mathematical dimension, there's a geospatial dimension, and just to compute that at all, the most mundane things in our life use some of the most advanced processing and algorithms. You just never even think about it. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah, that's great. That's great insight, because you don't, I mean, I have obviously sat at a stoplight and I have thought multiple times, how the hell does this all work? But you don't think about it. And yeah, there's a lot of work that goes into it. As far as going, that was fascinating. as you're going through this kind of skill sets, whether it was bosses or mentors, anything pop up there that you're like, wow, this was invaluable, that I learned as prepping you, getting, ready for the BitRivals Web3 conversation? And if it's no, it's totally fine.
I mean, I guess that one of the things is it's a similar theme to what we've been talking about, is like, you just have to do it, right?
Right.
There were definitely issues when I first started my job where it was kind of like the lanes in the road, like who does what, weren't very well defined. So when I first started, it was a lot of like, what am I supposed to be doing on a day-to-day?
Right.
And I had one of my mentors was someone, she was just really gung-ho about just do it, right? Like Nike, just like even if it's not your job particularly, like take on more than you're supposed to be doing, find things to do. Managers will notice, people will take on that you're a hard worker, that you want to contribute to the company. And that's true. Like in any job you're in, always seek to do more to help. People always say like, don't do more for your employer than they're paying you to do. Well, that's just not a recipe for success. People, want people who are valuable. And if you're working 40 hours a week, then you should be filling all those hours as productively as you can. If you run out of work to do, find more work to do or more things to improve. So I'm a problem solver. I like to fix processes. Started going outside my box, and that got me promoted pretty quickly. And I went from being someone who just does the analytical work to being someone who's in charge of a team of people who do analytic work and to develop processes in software pretty quickly. So yeah, again, it's just important when you have an idea or you find opportunities to not waste time, but to be productive and to pursue that.
No, I love it, man. And yeah, that is a common theme as well as we continue to talk through this. Anything else kind of in this professional realm that you want to talk about, or can we kind of start segueing back into the research that went into the Web3 world to get to the BitRivals? Anything else you want to touch on quick?
Yeah, so that job has been like all of my professional career outside of college and BitRivals. I have continued with the filmmaking and photography on the side.
Oh, nice.
I kind of forgot about it in college, went away, kind of did my own thing, and almost immediately outside of college, like I miss doing this, and bought a new camera because my old one, I think it was like one of the original Canon Rebel cameras, and actually a lot of stuff back here on my shelf.
I see camera equipment.
So and started shooting weddings and a lot of like figuring out the photography piece, but building kind of the network and relationships, and then starting more music videos, and then moving also into short films, some corporate stuff, and starting to get more in like the indie like feature film world too. It's been kind of cool of late too. I don't have like so much time for it, so it's something that I've just continued to do on the side, but it's one of my important, like it's a creative pursuit that's really important to me. So wherever I can help out some of my filmmaking friends, or join a set for a few days, or help produce a project or something like that, I'm always happy to.
So yeah, this is another thing that just sparked in my head, just you talking. That's really cool to hear. And I'm assuming that you kind of came back to this because it was an outlet of some sort, right? And you're doing a lot of analytical, heavy data stuff, and this is just a completely different mindset and almost a way to release some different energy. I talk about this a lot, and I would love your take on it because creativity has also been a theme of our conversation. Now, listen, I understand that people sometimes just have an inherent ability to be good at something. But I hate the narrative that you hear all the time is I'm just not creative, right? What are your thoughts there on that statement? And is it another thing in the mind of just do it? Because you just took us through a creativity path of, hey, I was interested in photography. I wanted to figure out how to shoot wedding photos. And then I started doing video, and I did music videos and corporate videos. is creativity in your mind as simple as just do it, or what are your thoughts there? Because I really do hate that I'm not creative narrative.
Mm-hmm. I think it is that simple, but saying it's that simple might be misleading. So
Right.
I think that every human being is creative as a species. Like, just the way that we are, like the way that we exist is we have both sides of our brain, if you want to reduce it to that. But
Mm-hmm.
everyone has those two sides. Everyone has this idea of like creating something, making something out of nothing.
Right.
And it's not really out of nothing, but it's out of your mind,
Yeah.
which is the starting point. And I think that people who don't think that they're creative maybe just haven't found the right outlet for it,
Right.
and don't see where they're creative. So I talk, my wife and I talk about this all the time, because she's always like, you're always shooting creative portraits or making films, and what am I doing? And I'm like, rearranging furniture and gardening and stuff. I'm like, no, that's like, you find creativity. She's done a lot. She's been a barista as well. She was worked in a bar at some point. She's a therapist, mental health therapist now, but she's done so many different things she's like interested in, and the
Right.
way that she would pour effort into figuring out like how coffee works,
Right.
and learning about like all the different beans and how to create all of these different types of coffee drinks with espresso and cold brew, and like all the different ways you can make it. That's creativity.
Yeah.
The way that you pour love into your own home and arrange furniture or paint the walls, that's creativity.
Yeah.
And you might be following, like, there's research, I think, is important for creativity. As we talked about, if you're trying to make something that looks good, you're naturally going to go and look at a bunch of other things to figure out what other people say looks good, but also what resonates with you. So if I'm going to rearrange my living room, I'm going to look online to see a bunch of examples of how people did that. And I'm going to figure out the ones that I like the best, but also see the trends. If maybe I like the dark aesthetic with black walls or something, then that's my personal choice. But then I'm going to see how other people did that, and use that as inspiration. Nobody really created anything in a vacuum, right?
I love it.
And see what I said, I'm a film nerd. Like, all your greatest directors had favorite movies that they emulated.
Absolutely.
Steven Spielberg is a great example, because he has a bunch of favorite films. One of his big favorites of all time is Lawrence of Arabia, and before he directs any movie, he watches that. He just watches it every time before he directs a new movie, because he's just so inspired by the creativity there. So I think if you think you're not creative, you just maybe need to try more things, or maybe need a perspective that the things that you're doing could be creative. You could already be doing that.
And that is something new and unique that I have not heard, and I think it's beautiful, right? Another great message here is creativity does not have to be making something pretty or doing video or doing photography. I love actually how you put it. Rearranging furniture in an interesting way in a home is creativity, right? And I think it's it actually reminds me of another conversation we have, and this guy is a dev, and we were talking about the passion thing that we talked about earlier, right? Having a passion is super important, especially to get you through hard times. It's kind of a parallel thought process, but passion in the sense that let's take video games, for instance, right? People are like, oh, when you think video games, where does your head go? Well, I need to be a digital artist or an animator or a 3D character modeler, right? And his point was, if you love video games and that's your passion, it's a massive industry. There's analytical people, there are video game testers, there are people, there's marketing, there's all of these different things.
Heck,
That if
there's
you are
sports
really
posters now.
Yeah, if you're really that passionate, you can find something. So just to your point, kind of a parallel similar thought process is if you really actually do want to try creativity, there's something for you to find. Whether it be my wife, she'll say she's not creative, but you know what she is? She's an incredible organizer. And there's all businesses, there's literally reality shows about the creativity of how they can make these small spaces look big due to organization. To your point, that's creativity. So I love that angle that you took. It's super interesting. So thanks for sharing that, man. Okay, so we were talking about the video stuff. Anything else there before we kind of get back into that Web3 research?
I feel like it's a decent segue to kind of like walk into that. Yeah.
Perfect. So let's pop into Web3. We're going to go all Web3 and BitRivals from here on out. So you really took us down an interesting path about how you were researching. I actually love your explanation of why you or what you think metaverse meant for blockchain, and it was having all of these interconnected worlds and be able to sell them. Take us kind of from that point, move us towards BitRivals. But before we get to BitRivals, anything else you want to share about your kind of Web3 journey up to starting the company? And if not, we can go straight into BitRivals.
Yeah. So Web3 has always been something I've been around, that's been interesting to me, and I was an investor, and then like slowly starting getting more and more into it, as people tend to do. I guess it kind of traps you in some way. But I was first interested in the tech before I was interested in anything related to making money or businesses. It's just such a unique idea. And then, you saw the Bitcoin chart go crazy and be like, oh, this is the best investment in the history of mankind, which maybe I don't know. It might be.
It's one of them for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. And I did have a friend who actually is the person who first got me really into Web3 is working with the company now.
Nice.
He's been working in Web3 basically ever since he got into it.
Yeah.
Did a lot of like consulting and then a lot of advising on different projects, but really made it big as like an initial investor in some of the like original ICOs on different chains. So he just totally understands everything. So I'm really glad to have him on the company. His experience will just be invaluable for building us value because he understands the tech like no one else. But yeah, he was investing in all these ICOs. He's like, dude, I'm going to take all my savings and throw it in this coin. I'm like, what are you talking about, man? Like, I've never even heard of that. That's crazy. And then he makes a bunch of money. Like, go figure. But it did pique my interest to research more into it. And I definitely stayed conservative in my initial investments, which were more around your Ethereum and Bitcoin, and then more recently in like Solana and Cardano and stuff.
A little dollar cost averaging into those bad boys.
Exactly. Yeah. And yeah, I was around a bunch of projects, and I met my co-founder.
Real quick, what time frame are we talking about where you're really starting to dabble into crypto?
So, okay, last bull run was
21 too.
Yeah, 21, 22. And then before that was what, 2018?
Yeah, around 2018.
Okay. So in 2018 time, I'm probably more focused on just the big boys and investing in that. And then in that 21, it's more like really getting involved in some of the micro caps and some of the new tech and learning about like launch pads and how exchanges worked and really spending a lot of time in that. And that's when a lot of the hype was. So it's understandable that it would like evolve that way.
If you remember Hate Beast, I was one of the original Hate Beast mods, and that's where it really kind of blew up for me. And then I made a shit ton of money and lost a lot of it. Now everybody does that.
Yeah. I probably made like $100,000 and lost it overnight and a couple of times or something. Like just happened all the time with those projects.
I wish it was only 100 grand, man. Yeah, it was rough, but, you know, listen, I paid for a round of IVF with a digital monkey, so I'll take that.
Yeah,
I'll take that. I did get some profits and actually spend it on my life,
that's
so
good. That's good.
it's good.
Yeah.
So yeah, okay, so we're at the 2021, you're really starting to get, a lot deeper into it in the second bull run, and I think you were talking about you met somebody in a community or started a contact.
Right. So Jamie is the co-founder of BitRivals, and he's from the UK.
Mhm.
So we met. We're actually both like gamers too. So we play like a lot of League of Legends,
Yeah,
and I play, unfortunately, too much League of Legends these days as well.
yeah.
So that's something we connected on to. But he's just a very talented graphic designer and programmer. And he's worked with like a lot of really big brands. Like he's worked with Disney and Pixar, and I can't remember the whole list, but he's built platforms, and he worked on some like CS:GO skin trading platform that was really popular back in the day too. There's some
Nice.
gaming experience. But yeah, we were both like investing in different projects, and some of these were these projects that were very mismanaged. We'll just
Yes.
say that, like, it promised a lot initially and then delivered on absolutely zero. And they were the most basic things, like
Yep.
get on an exchange, like Bitmart or something like that,
Right.
or a White
Right.
Bit, and like make a website that can track your investment, like an API that would take us like 10 minutes to set up. Or
Right.
um,
Right.
we're having this background in tech development, and then watching these teams like make just wreck these projects with people who trusted in them,
Yeah.
just really frustrated us. So I think like we could harken back to that debate idea of whether you're just creating hype and
Mhm.
like empty promises versus actually delivering on a product. I think that especially in that era, so many projects just lived on that whole idea of just hype building and let's pump the charts, but had
Yep.
zero substance behind them. And
Mm.
unfortunately, I think still see that a lot today, but less because
100%.
it's repackaged. So you had your Elon come Doge, whatever rocket coin.
Yeah.
And now it's so and so AI network,
Yeah.
something that's,
Yeah.
has all of these backers. And
Yeah.
but there isn't actually, like, it's a chat GPT like clone with a license or something.
Yeah.
And
It
they make money off of it, but there's not really substance behind it.
Yeah, and I would say over time, because I really my introduction was in 2021. I randomly won a cool cat through a creative competition. Had no clue. My initial attraction though was I'm a brand marketing guy, right? And it's brand 3.0 to me, really. And I understand the power of community and how if you cultivate a brand correctly in this space, it can be revolutionary for sure. Bored Ape really did it first. They just created a really rich person's club, right? But they didn't have a strategy and they let that, it's gone the wayside. But I think if you do the community part right, you can create something very special. Um, but what I was getting at is I told you I'd screw the podcast up. Totally lost my thought. I drank a lot of alcohol in my late 20s and early 30s. This happens often. What were you talking about? I won't remember this. What
Uh,
were we talking about?
we were kind of just walking through the process, like we're in 21, but I was just talking about some of the
Oh, this is what I
motivations.
was
And
gonna say. Totally agree with you. What I think is interesting over the evolution of time is, I mean, I had some of these, in the beginning, I was getting anybody on, right? And there was definitely conversations. Fortunately, they're not recorded or they're because they were on Twitch and they're gone now. But I'm thinking to myself, there's no chance in hell this person is going to be able to do what they want to do. For instance, they would be like, yeah, I'm going to make a full-fledged video game. And they'd be like, uh, no, no, never started a company, don't really know how to make a video game, but I got a community, I'm gonna make it happen. I'm like, this is just a waste of my time. And what I have seen over time, though, is real entrepreneurs coming in. But in addition, and this is the biggest change, Web3 is not the company and the monetization. Web3 is a technology being used to make a profitable company, right? Because in the beginning, when no one knew better, they were like, oh, Web3 is the business. And it's like, no, it's just a technology to make a successful business more interesting. And that's what I've seen evolve over the last handful of years I've been doing this, for sure.
Right. Yeah, that's super important. And I think that a lot of people miss that element, even in the space when building their companies, is there isn't really a reason for the Web3. They tack a token on because you can raise money, you can make money on exchanges, or like running the actual project. But I look at so many projects and say, like, why is there a token here, right? Like,
right.
It is a very powerful tech and a really important tech, but it's important that it's used in a way that makes sense for the system. And I think that might be a lot of people's reservation for Web3 now, is because they're promised all these things, going to revolutionize all these things, and then so many of these people like came out with products, if we could call them that, like or just projects that didn't materialize on any of the actual application for it.
Right, right. So you're pissed about getting scammed and seeing these people flush these things away. You've met your co-founder. What's next?
Yeah. And it wasn't even the money aspect so much as it was just like, when I see something not done right, I just get motivated to fix it. And to like, sometimes it's a challenge for me. Like, I just see that, I'm like, oh, well, yeah, we can do that better. That someone can actually do this right. So we started throwing around ideas and discussing and say, we love gaming. We're pretty into this Web3 thing. Like, we think this technology is really cool. Is there a way that we can combine that? Is there a way that we can create an actual Web3 ecosystem for gaming that works? Because we'd also, we played a lot of these Web3 games, with it's Axie Infinity, or I think Fed Arena was the one that I actually kind of enjoyed, but fell off pretty quick. So we had
not a lot of enjoyable experiences quite yet.
Right. Yeah. And it very early on, kind of in the tech for it. So you don't have like major studios or people jumping onto it. But I think that this whole idea of the metaverse being something that's like above the game, and the Web3 architecture being something that's like across games, is kind of the way to go. Like, that's where it is. It's not just about building a game where you have your skins or NFTs or stuff like that, which is the building blocks. But then everyone tries to just have their own token and build their own economy around it. And I don't think that's going to work for most games.
Yeah,
just
what you're getting at is an interoperable space. It lives above these building blocks, right?
Right. Yeah.
Right.
So the other thing we see, and we've seen probably to a little bit more success, and even still lately, there's some projects like Portal Gaming was one that launched recently.
Right.
But you also had like Gala Games, I think, is a good example. You have like a game company or a game studio that promises to be the token for all Web3 games.
Right.
Right. And so when there's multiple people like promising that, you're kind of like a little skeptical. But if it's something like Gala Games, where they have the ability to, like, their studios, they make their own games, like, there's something pretty valuable there, I think, too. And I think I really appreciate the way that they've gone about it as a company.
Right.
But yeah, it was either like there were these games that no one wanted to play, or there's no, if you wanted to earn or you wanted to like participate in that Web3 architecture, then you would have to be like shackled to a specific game.
Yeah.
We didn't really like either of those solutions. So we went for a data-driven approach. So this idea kind of came from like, I'm playing League of Legends. I'm using like Tracker Network, like tracker.gg, where you can look up all your stats. And honestly, anytime I play League of Legends right now, there's like 7 different applications that just pop up because I downloaded them, and I regret doing that. But there's one for capturing the game, but there's also one that kind of scouts your opponents. There's one that gives you like real time, like here's the gold you're earning versus.
Right.
It's just crazy the sorts of applications people are building to serve these games. Well, each of these applications is a company. Like they're all owned by someone who's running that. And they're making mostly through ad revenue and stuff like that. But sometimes it's a subscription. And we like investigate like, Jamie knew probably better than me because he does more of this sort of like web tech, but the whole idea of a game API that's taking the data from the game, so it's separating the platform, the game itself, from the data for the player. So it's this magical like word that's API, but all it is the endpoint. It just has all the data in one place in a database, and then you're querying it through some term. And in this case, it's the player name. So we see this, and I'm like, wow, well, we could just build a system that resolves or like separates the data layer from the game itself and house it all in one place. And then that way, people can play Axie Infinity, or they can play League of Legends, and they can earn something for it. They can track their data. We can like build on top of that as a technology. There's so many infinite applications.
Right.
And if we can work with multiple, like you have all these disparate Web3 games. If we can work with multiple Web3 games, we could create like some sort of a marketplace or somewhere central where things could be transferred across those games to help like move us closer to that original idea of a real metaverse. So that's the idea, and that's what we started with. And it's been a lot of work like putting it together and building the platform that we have now, which is actually live. And I can talk way more about specifics, but that's the motivation. We wanted to take blockchain, take the application of blockchain to gaming in a way that it was intended to, and a way that makes sense for the technology.
Yeah, no, I love it. And I think what's really interesting is, like I said, I've talked to a lot of people. We both have seen a lot of things in this space. I don't know. I'm not like gaming's not my specific genre. Competition wise, because I think this is one of the more interesting things. The only other thing, because everyone's like gaming, but they're going to the point that like a game is going to change the game for Web3. You are kind of going in between. And I think that's actually how we progress. Like you said, the only other things that have actually like been interesting and like corporate brands like Starbucks's like rewards loyalty programs totally make sense for Web3, right? Gaming does, but they're just not there yet. But I think your in between is very interesting. I think my question is, what does the competition in this space look like for what you're doing, or is your idea still early enough and unique enough, not much competition? What does that look like?
So it's unique enough that there's not a big competitor. There are people in places here and there that use web APIs, and there are people that do some things that maybe are a little bit similar. So, for instance, like guilds in general have kind of moved to a newer sort of model where it's not so much about like scholarships and buying the NFTs as it is about going to the game, and then that game is giving rewards to their players. So they may be paying people like 50 cents to play the game for a couple hours or something like that to try it out, so you can kind of like monetize the player base. And that is one of the things that we're trying to do. Like that's one of the revenue streams, right? Is games need an audience. We have that audience, so games can come and kind of like pay money to monetize interaction, right? So that's something you see in the space, but not in the same way, and definitely not in a data-driven way.
Right.
A lot of these things are based around like screenshots or just like verification from the project owner, which
Right.
people can forge that, and it creates a lot of like work to do it all manually. We're trying to create a system that does everything automatically. So
Right.
when we go to a Web3 game, they build us an API, or we help them build it if they don't know how,
Yep.
to have an endpoint for that player data, so they can take all of the whether it's wins or headshots, or if it's chess, it could be like checkmates or something like that. Just
Right.
the data that's in your system. And then we're interacting with it in that unique way.
Yeah.
I don't know. The other one that comes to mind is Games.gg is a project that was, it's just PokeStarter. It's their like gaming architecture. And they do actually use the API, but it's all built around that kind of quest idea.
Right.
So it's not as much on the data side as it is like a limited time game comes. Hey, we want 10,000 users on the game. They run it for a couple days. They pay money and hand out an NFT. So there's some crossover. We're doing some things that are similar to that. But our platform is one where a player can also just log in and pick any of the games that like are in the library. So they could pick like Conquest is a Telos-based Web3 game that we recently connected. So you can pick that. I could play that today, and I could play, just today I played both League of Legends and Helldivers 2, which are both connected with the platform. And I can see my data, I can see my Steam achievements like in the platform, and you can earn points and start to participate in an ecosystem, like jump between games, and have that ability to connect them at any point. So,
yeah, and what's interesting about the idea though is because it's really an advertiser's dream or a gaming company's dream is one, you want an audience, right? But to have an engaged audience because they're engaged in your platform and can get rewarded, that's a step up that not a lot of people have. So totally interesting business concept and solution. Let's do this. To really get into the BitRivals, I'm interested in, and I kind of ask this for everybody. You're going up the elevator, you're at the Silicon Valley startup. You got to give your pitch of, what are you really trying to accomplish? What's the problem that you're trying to solve, and why should anybody spend their time, which is as the older you get, time is more valuable than money for sure. As long as you have enough money to survive, or money eventually with you. So like what is this kind of condensed version of your vision for BitRivals?
Yeah, it's interesting because I actually would pitch it different to the gamer, like to the customer, than I would to the investor. But I can give two versions, or I can kind of like try.
Let's do two versions. I like this because it is a different audience. So I think it's actually really important. And you've just sparked a new thought of going forward. When I talk to founders, I actually like those two concepts of understanding the business principles, but then understanding the benefit for the consumer or user. So let's go through both of those. I think that's great.
Yeah. Okay. Well, so for the user, imagine there's a platform where you can play any of the games that you already play, your favorite titles. You can connect your account. You can see in real time the data from those games, and then get real world rewards, whether it's like a Steam gift card or $10 here and there for playing those games. And you're exposed to a new community and new games to try that will just pay you for trying out their game.
Yeah.
And guess what? It's free to sign up.
Perfect. I'm sold. I game anyways. I'm going to sign up for free, hook my account up. Let's start earning some money and play the games I want to play anyways. Love it. So user, I'm good. Let's talk about the business side.
Yeah. So business side. So what we're trying to do is two things: solve the user acquisition problem and solve the data flow problem. So in the user acquisition side, new games their hardest thing is finding new players. And this can be a Web3 game, but this could also be an indie game. This could be a Steam game, which we're working with plenty of those studios as well. So we are creating a system whereby games can find already active players that are interested in trying out their game. And then for basically a fraction of what they would spend in advertising, they can pay to have people actually join the game and try it out.
Love it.
And then from the data side, there's never been really a platform that can take all the Web3 games, all the AAA games and indie games in one place, and see gamers and their habits across multiple games. So we're seeing, if someone loves to play Valorant, like, do they like to play, like, what Web3 games or indie games are they playing as well? And so we're solving that problem by taking it all into one platform to better create data flows across those games that we can use for advertisers, or even within our own platform, or to guide, indie studios to figure out how to better reach the gamers and interact with them.
Yeah, you can kind of start building kind of customer personas, profiles, and whatnot. No, super interesting, and it all makes sense. So I go naturally to, and this is a burning question, you are integrating with other existing IPs. There has to be some legal barriers when it comes to data you're acquiring. Now, I know a lot of these APIs are public, right? But even in that, there's fine print. And now you're starting to attach economies, awards. I'm assuming the hot word token eventually might come in. How do you navigate all of that? And what do these barriers look like?
Yeah, so it definitely depends on the individual studio and the game. So each of these APIs is different. Dota, for instance, is a good example of one that's just a completely open API. There aren't a lot of restrictions. The only thing that most of these APIs say is that you can't sell access to their API as your product, right? You can't take their API and then say, all right, for $10 a month, we'll show you the data from the game, because that's something that they're offering you for free. And that's just a total violation of terms. So that's the one thing you can't do. Obviously, we're not doing that. Some might have different terms and conditions throughout. So it's a matter of figuring out what with that studio fits those terms and conditions. In some instances, so we have like League of Legends and Valorant, you have to actually apply for an official like production key and get approved as the developer. So any of the games where we've needed to do that we've had to jump through a couple of hoops to actually work with the game developer. It's not as massive of a thing as you would think, because there are a bunch of applications that work with these games. But they are going to review your platform and kind of your business and what you're going to use it for. But we've gotten the thumbs up on all of the ones that we have currently. So yeah, I mean, that's something we had to sort, and part of the reason it's taken us a bit of time to build this platform, which we started actually working on code, I'd say early 2022. So there's been a lot of work that's going into this, but I think it's cool because we're going to market with a live working platform where most tokens launch with, hey, we're going to do something down the line, and then 2 years later there's still nothing. Even incredibly hyped projects, I remember from the last bull run, never released their game, or never, like, it's just crazy. So I think that's a huge distinctive for us. We put all the work in to build the thing and to have something for the customer beforehand, to get all those clearances and whatnot. So that's kind of that's how we're moving into the space. And that really, I think, helps for the customer to see that we're serious about what we're doing.
I love it. And so one question, then we can talk about the platform. And then, I know, believe it or not, we've been talking for an hour and a half. I told you we'd go by quick. It's been a beautiful conversation. Hope I've guided you in a good direction. You feel comfortable. But I want to talk about the platform. And let's just go there. Let's just go to the platform and talk about what you've released and how. Oh, actually, I remember. I was trying to not screw it up again, and I've remembered. I'm interested in just a random thought, and you might not have insight or not, but why is Valorant and is this something that you think about that could be a roadblock in the future if these game companies decide, hey, I don't want to have an API. I don't want to be sharing my data with the public, or I don't want to even have an application process. Does that worry you, or has it become such commonplace that you think it's not an issue?
Yeah, so that's always something that's potential, but it doesn't worry me at all because it's become such a huge part of the ecosystem that it's
Right.
almost suicide for a game to remove that. And we've seen a couple, I think like Blizzard Activision might be one of the examples of like one of the evil companies that's done this, right? And gamers just, they lose it, they hate it.
Yeah.
And the thing is that, as I was saying earlier, when I play League of Legends, there's like 7 different things that pop up. These game companies build ecosystems around the data for the game. So it's really important for them to have to provide that for different developers. And people use it for all sorts of things, like pro guides or something might use it to tell you how you perform in each round so you can get better at the game. And
Right.
for the game developer, that helps people get more hooked on the game. If they're like, to take away a tool that's helping people improve at their game, it's just crazy.
Right.
You wouldn't
Right.
want to do that.
Right.
And so our platform is like driving, it's driving user retention. It's driving like activity to games that aren't even necessarily asking for
Yeah.
that, right? Like it's getting people more hooked on different ways to interact with and play these games.
Yeah.
So it just would be bad business sense for someone to say, yeah, we'll just get rid of the API altogether.
Yeah.
And one game or two could do that. But again, that's one of the things with our business model too. Is it's not like we're building the system for this one game. And,
Right.
we're not building a League of Legends match analyzer.
Yeah. Yeah.
We're building the ultimate platform that has at some point in the future, but we're getting there, right? Every Web3 indie and AAA game, like I want to have them all. I want to create a system that integrates the data for everything out there.
Yeah. No, that makes sense, and I think that's a good explanation. I was just interested in your thought process and kind of insight into that process. So that was great. So I already know we're gonna have to link up after this and maybe do some video of actual like tutorials and stuff like that, because I think it'd be fun. But since we can't be sharing, I mean, I could share my screen right now, but that'd be a whole nother thing. Take us through kind of what you released to the public. When did that happen? What does the evolution of the platform look like to current day? Just kind of take us through what people can expect when they sign up for BitRivals.
Yeah, absolutely. So we started with an alpha last year, had a number of players to kind of test that. We've kind of moved like, I'd say really into the full beta. I don't necessarily call it beta because it's live working platform.
Right.
But what works right now is a platform with, I think we're at like 55 different integrated games.
Wow.
And we're working on a bunch. One of my goals is to have not integrated, but partnerships with 100 Web3 games before token even launches. And we've been moving very rapidly towards that goal. Like people love the platform and games want to join. So it takes more work to connect their data than to just form a partnership. Of course, there's a lot of technical work behind that.
Right.
But yeah, there's a huge library. So if one of the games you play is on there, which chances are at least one of them are, you can sign up for an account for free. And what you can do is go to that game's page. So you see that on the home page. You can go to earn, you can search in search bar, whatever. And then you take your username and bring that over. So we put instructions there if it's difficult to find. Like the Steam username needs to be the like numerical username, not like your public username.
Right.
But it should be easy enough to figure out with the instructions.
Right.
And then you connect your account, and then you kind of just hit start tracking, start earning, and that starts porting the data over to the platform. It's kind of like the start point, and then we measure everything that happens from that start point on. So every time it updates, you're seeing the new data. If it's a Steam achievement, you'll see those achievements like unlock. And if it's, you know, it matches you play in Valorant or League of Legends, you'll get a full match report actually that shows all of the data for the things we track. So like if it's League of Legends, like kills, and you know, kills, assists, vision, score, like you
Nice.
name it. There's like 20 different trackers in there for the different data.
Are you constantly adding new things to track, or are you is that other, you know, like you're bringing on new games, but you're also thinking of new things that you can award due because of the data?
Yep. So part of it is a balancing act.
Yeah.
So we very heavily, like before when we bring a new game on, that part of the reason it takes a bit of time to integrate that API is because we have to then have people play it to figure out like, okay, well we played this new Web3 game we added, and now it earns you like 4 times the points that all the other games
Right.
earn in that
Right.
hour. Right. Like we have to make sure that it's on the same level as all the other games in terms of what you're rewarded for.
Interesting. Yeah. Yeah.
And we do use kind of like an AI system, TensorFlow, if you're familiar with it, to help balance that and work on the data in the background. So when we talk about things being like AI powered, that's an actual like application for AI that
Right.
is helpful from a data perspective. But yeah, it's it depends on the tracker. So some will be not as mature. Some games will only have a few things. Like they might just have like flag captures, wins, kills. Like they might have like 4 or 5 things. Things like Dota or League of Legends have very robust APIs.
Yeah.
Riots might be just the best out there, period, because they track in real time. Like every second of the game, you're getting updates with the production.
That's wild.
And it's just every single stat, like how many fire dragons did you kill, or yeah, like cannon minions killed. So
they've got data on everything. Random quick tangent. Do you know who Team Solomid is? They're League of Legends pro team. I shot a commercial, a whole Twitch campaign in Team Solomid's house when Bjergsen was, I don't even know if he's still there. Sven Bjergsen, what's the other guy's name? Double Lift or something?
Double Lift, yeah.
Yeah. All of them, hung out with them for like 4 days and shot this huge Twitch campaign. It was the most bizarre experience of my life because it was a bunch of 20-year-olds that were multimillionaires. They lived in this house. They literally bought this house in LA to be as close as possible to Riot Games, because at that time, the servers were still at where Riot Games were. They hadn't centralized the servers, so they were getting like milliseconds better response time. So they buy this like multi-million-dollar house. It's got 45 pairs of shoes in the front door. It's got an 85-inch TV in the living room. Nothing else in the house other than a den filled with computers, and they're gaming 16 hours a day. And I shit you not, like every 45 minutes, there was a new carry-out person at the front door, and that's the life they lived. It was the most bizarre experience I've ever been through.
That's crazy.
Because I heard a I hear you keep on saying League of Legends. I'm like, I know those Team Solomid guys.
Yeah, no, those guys are legends. I don't think any of those guys are still on teams. I've watched some competitive probably here and there, but I think
Andy was the owner of Team Solomid, and he got his start literally doing exactly. He was in college. He told me the whole story. He's like in college, had a website, started crunching League of Legends data. No one had really, done it or taken it to the level he has. He's like, 1 month I had 3,000 subscribers on my website. Within 6 months, I was making, multiple 6 figures a month because of this data analytics website on League of Legends, and the rest is history, man. So you're on to something with analytics. People, especially in gaming, are just obsessed with it, right? Super interesting. But I took that side tangent. What I wanted to follow up to on the platform, though, is you're saying, okay, which is interesting. I wouldn't have thought about this. There's a balancing act between the awards per game, and every game different genre. So that's going to be something that you're going to continue to struggle with as you build your library. Next, I'm interested in the UI, right? So how does that experience from a user perspective? You log in, you pick the game, right? You're logging into your Steam account. Am I seeing something from your platform as a UI over top of the game, or am I going to play the game and then when I'm done, I'm logging back into your website to see what happened? How does that work?
Yeah, so this is something that we debated a bit, but we ended up going with a web-based application for a number of reasons. Like we could do a desktop application or like an iOS application or something like that pretty easily. But the thing with web is like that works on all of those platforms. Your gamer isn't necessarily on, like they're not necessarily on PC. They could be on
Right.
console. They could be on a Nintendo Switch.
Yep.
And we want to incorporate mobile games too. So they could be just playing a game on their phone. And so yeah, it's just a matter of going to the website, and then when you like sign in and start tracking, you don't really have to do anything while you're in the game. There's not like an overlay or anything like that.
Gotcha.
You just at the end of the match, like go back, and it does auto update, but you can also just click update, and it'll show you like the match reports.
Gotcha. And and immediately you're starting to gain rewards, or is that caching like every 24 hours? How does that work?
So a bunch of different ways that you can actually earn rewards. We have the token, but we also, like most of the platform is operating on a point system. So I think like, like any in-platform like Steam points or something like that, right?
Yeah.
Everybody is earning points for all the games they're playing. And those points could be converted to a bunch of different things. Right now, one of the main ways is through raffles. So it's like a random draw sort of reward. So you play a bunch of games, you earn points, and then you can enter raffles that happen every few days.
Gotcha.
And some of those could be, like some cryptocurrency like USDT. Some of those are like actual gamer gear that could be from like a sponsor. It could even be like energy drinks or something like that.
Yeah.
Gaming mice. One of the things that's popular is just in-game currency. So people want to trade it for like Riot points or something like that. So that's one of the things that we have. Right. One of the things we're working to do is to also work with a bunch of physical brands. So one of my aspirations is to have people like basically trade points for like persistent discounts across different brands. So say you could just use like Ghost Energy Drink, which there's a company that works with a lot of platforms like this. You earn a bunch of points, and say you trade like 10,000 points, which is not a huge number, but trade 10,000 points for like a 20-30% discount on an order from Ghost or something like that.
Right.
And if they want to like give free product, we can use that in like raffles or auctions. But I also want to create a system where people have kind of that persistent, like even if you didn't win a raffle, you could exchange something for like actual value in purchasing power.
Awesome.
And that's just kind of a win for everyone. Like, it's a win for the gamer. It's a win for the product provider because they're getting sales. And a win for us because people are happy and using the platform.
Right. Absolutely. All right, man. So let's start winding it down. I always like to say, I have one more question. It's a softball question. Don't be too scared. Promise it won't be brutal. But before that, I want to give you, in the next 6 to 12 months, what does that look like? You have the platform working. You're trying to grow this library to 100 games. You're looking at Web3 games. You said mobile games. Anything else that you want to share with us? Of course, don't share too much because people have made that mistake on my show as well. So whatever you're comfortable with.
Yeah. So we're definitely really expanding into the Web3 partnerships and bringing on some of those games. My hope is to get more and more of them hooked up API-wise and to start tracking the data. So in terms of product offerings, there are 2 things that we are working on that will be upcoming in the next few months. First one actually probably sooner than that. Second one needs a bit of development work. So we are working on a quest system, as I kind of talked about, but polishing up that whereby different advertisers or different games can, host their rewards for players. So people can just join our platform, and then those rewards are connected to this specific game. So there could be like NFT drops. We've been doing the coding's not completely fixed for it, but with the community, we've been doing a couple of these, and they've been like really popular. People are like, oh, we can go play their game and get some of their NFTs for free. Like, people love it. So
Yeah.
That's going to be one of the next product offerings, and I think that'll help bring a lot of users. And then we're also working on a competitive system.
Oh, nice.
So we'll have, you can set brackets, you can like join pools, but we're working on something pretty unique that I don't think anyone's done in this space or just in general. We're working on a 1v1 tournament system.
Nice.
So you can like challenge your friend. And basically what this is, it uses the data application. So you're not actually playing against your friend.
Right.
You're agreeing to like the challenge terms. So I could say to my friend, hey, I think that I will have a better win rate, or maybe I'll get more kills in my next 10 games of Valorant than you will.
Right.
So you both join, you say like, all right, I'll bet you $5 on this.
Nice.
So you both put up $5 of, probably like USDT, but we can do a bunch of different currencies.
Right.
And then the winner like takes that wager.
Love it.
So yeah, we'll have a bunch of different ways that people can compete against each other, but that's one I'm excited for, because I think people would actually like use that, like that.
Yeah.
Some people are really scared to join like a group tournament, but if I turn to my friend, I'm like, hey, I can do better than you. Yeah, I think people will do that.
Listen, man, the whole Pac-Man or Pac-Moon and what's the other one that the fantasy top stuff, like, people are obsessed with this competition, and if you can link monetization to competition, it's usually a win-win. So I mean, let's be honest, this is straight up, and if most of NFTs is just a straight gamble situation, right? You're throwing your money at something hoping that you're going to hit the moon, and you most likely aren't. So yeah, if you can pair those concepts together with gaming, because it's RuneScape. I cannot tell you, I want to say 80% of the founders that have been on this show reference RuneScape. You even reference RuneScape today.
Yeah.
It's incredible the amount of gaming culture that exists in Web3. So if you can continue to pull it off and bring Web3 in, I think the other failure that most people make is they're like, I'm doing Web3 games, and it's just like, that market is not big enough, right? But you're solving that problem with bringing in League of Legends and Valorant and all these other games, so it keeps the actual gamer interested. Whereas if you're just a Web3 game, you have this Web2 gamer hating Web3 gamer thing going on. There's that whole situation, but then it's the actual Web3 market is just very small, right? So no, that's interesting. Anything else to add before I ask my last question? We kind of wrap this up. Any other final thoughts, I think, from BitRivals and what we can expect in the future?
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to give too much away,
Right.
But we're definitely working on expanding the partnerships. We are working on kind of a streamer ambassador program. One of our advisors is actually the head of social media at Twitch.
Nice.
So he's very connected in the space, getting us a lot of intros with these merchandising companies and with some of the bigger streamers. Some of them have been interested in a brand deal. So we'll probably have a couple of pretty cool brand ambassadors. And that'll be one of the ways that we bring a lot of people into the platform.
Love it. And I think you're talking to one right here who is a Joe Rogan-esque podcaster in Web3, but also a gamer. I'm just saying we should keep on talking here.
Would be happy to.
No, that's awesome, man. So amazing conversation. Minute 49 or hour 49. Sorry we kept you a little longer, but we were vibing. Things were going really well. Last question. I'm sure you've heard or listened into a bajillion spaces in the Web3, been part of spaces. How do you think your time on Mikey G Midlife Crisis podcast went tonight compared to other things that you've experienced? And again, be critical. I'm open to any feedback. I appreciate it.
No, I think this was great. I love the conversation and kind of talking about the ideas that inspired stuff. I think that most of the AMAs I've had to do have just been like a 30-minute, all right, tell us about the platform. What does the token do? Like, I get that. Like, it's important. But what that always communicates to me is that those investors probably aren't super serious, honestly. Like if it's all just focused on like a very short, like, what is this? I don't know. There's a lot of AMAs that I don't think are super valuable. So yeah, but this is definitely near the top for me. Yeah, for sure. I think where I'm just able to like chill out and really just nerd out about gaming and stuff.
Yeah.
One of my other favorites was we did one with Telos, who's one of our backers, and we were helping support a lot of their games. And the dude's like a huge gaming nerd. I mean, he runs the gaming part of that company, right? So he is. But we just talked about like games from like the early 2000s, and we just like, you know, wasted a bunch of time talking about like some of our favorite games from that era. We're like, oh wait, we should probably talk about the project. Sorry.
Yeah.
But that was just awesome. And so that's kind of what we've done here. So yeah, I love it. I don't feedback wise. Yeah, I know. I like the progression.
I'm cool with a bunch of happy, good smiles. You felt good vibes. I'm good with that too. So no. I mean, I appreciate it, man. I really appreciate the feedback that you given, in the sense that we accomplished the mission from the beginning. Is people will be able to listen to this. They understand you as a human now. Understand your thought processes. The debate conversation was fascinating. And I really appreciate the feedback. I want to give you kind of my closing comments, and then after that we can call it a night. Sound good?
Yeah, sounds great.
So yeah, I think back to our conversation, and one, I can really tell that you're a genuine human being, and that always means a lot to me. Two, I can really tell, and you've said this many times, I totally believe you, and I know you're not blowing smoke up my ass, that you wanna make things better, that you like to solve problems, and that's kind of inherently who you are as a person, analytical mindset as well. And where I have seen success of people on my show in the past, because let's be honest, all of these are startups too. 95% of these things will fail. But the ones that have succeeded are people like you that have a skill set, and you're using that skill set to align to, one, a passion, but two, something that utilizes your skill set. So I saw that in both of you, but you have both of that in the thing that you're building. But ultimately, man, I hope you feel the same way, but you've gained a new friend in Web3. What I think we did was magical. We built a friendship here live online. We have multiple people watching us, and I cannot wait to see your platform grow. And I also want to grow with you, so I can't wait to continue to keep on talking to you. And it was just a pleasure, man. Again, somebody like you that's got so much going on. Time is the most valuable thing you have, and you almost gave me 2 hours of it. So it deeply means a lot to me, and I'm just grateful. So I really appreciate it, man.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. Just appreciate it. I mean, those thoughts, it's just yeah, it means a lot. And absolutely. Yeah, you got a friend in us too.
Thanks, man.
Anytime.
Yeah, so we'll keep on talking. And with that being said, people, the Midlife Crisis show is coming to an end, unfortunately. I will be off for the rest of the week. I freaking love you all. I'll be back next Monday. We'll be getting the schedule. My boy Edge, who's my new business manager. We're booking shit out months in advance now. We're becoming a thing. We've got a lot of people lined up for the show. And just thank you so much, everybody. Thank you again, Spencer. I freaking love you all. Mikey G. Spencer and the Midlife Crisis Show is out.